Hello, hello. Good morning. I was just making sure the mic's on. How is everybody today? Wednesday again. We are officially into fall, and although the weather's not cooperating here yet, it's okay. Diffusing Harvest Spice. It's a delicious fall blend. There's cinnamon and nutmeg and stuff in there, so it smells like fall around here anyway. How is everybody? Okay. I always like to give everybody just a couple minutes to join. We are going to talk about the ideas of right and wrong today. Doesn't that sound fun? This comes up so much in coaching. A lot of my new clients come into coaching. We're going to talk about this from 3 different angles, but a lot of my clients come into coaching and there's this sense, this idea of what's right and what's wrong and what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening. So we're going to get into this, like I said, from 3 different angles because I think this is a really interesting, when we've got extremes like this, when it's all or nothing, right? When it's black or white, when it's right or wrong. These sorts of extremes are really interesting ground to just check in on. There may be something to challenge, there may be something to question there. So let's get into it. The first thing I want you to consider if you can find some right and wrong thinking in your mind, is whether you're labeling situations, people, places, or things like thoughts, feelings, actions, results. When we start labeling these things as right and wrong, we're into some kind of tricky territory. And here's what I mean. Like I said, people come to coaching, and of course, when they show up with me, it's usually because they're feeling anxious and they have this idea that anxiety is wrong and they shouldn't be feeling anxious and they want to not feel anxious. And that is why they have come to coaching. They say, I don't want to feel anxious. I don't like this. Help me not feel anxious. And the implication there is that anxiety is wrong, is that there's something wrong with them because they're feeling anxious, or that something has gone wrong in their life or something is going wrong in their situation because they're feeling anxiety on such an ongoing basis, right? And the reason they want to come to coaching, the reason they're showing up for coaching is because they want to feel something that they are labeling as right. Here's something that would feel more right to me. I want to feel happy. I want to feel calm. I want to feel peaceful, right? So they're looking at anxiety and they're saying this is wrong. And they're looking at these hypothetical emotions that they would like to feel more often. And they're saying these are right. Please help me get from wrong to right. And I'm like, okay, let's slow all this down. We're in such extremes here, right? We need to challenge the idea that feeling anxious is wrong, right? And we need to challenge the idea that feeling happy or feeling calm or feeling peaceful would be right. What's so right about that? And here's this perfect situation. Like, what if something bad happens? Meaning, maybe somebody passes away, right? Maybe you get laid off at work. Maybe you get a speeding ticket. I don't know. Whatever this looks like, however extreme you need to go. Do you want to feel happy in that circumstance, in that situation? Would happy be right in that situation? Right? So we have to look at this and just say, okay, why am I calling something right? Why am I calling something wrong? What am I making all of this mean? Is this really wrong? And is this other thing that I think that I want really right? Right? And I want to break all of this down and start looking at the labels and understanding the labels, because here's what I want to offer you. Feeling anxious is not a problem. There is nothing wrong with feeling anxious. The idea, the label, right, the story that we tell about how wrong anxiety is what feels so awful. Okay? So anxiety in and of itself is not right or wrong. It's just an emotion. It's neutral, right? Anxiety can be helpful, anxiety can be useful, anxiety can be a detriment, anxiety can get in our way, whatever. Anxiety is neutral, and how it shows up and how we think about it, how we talk to ourselves about it, is what feels so terrible. So, on the flip side, when we're feeling something like happy or calm or whatever that looks like, we're saying, oh, this is so right. This is amazing. I'm right because I'm feeling a right emotion. The thing that feels so amazing is the idea that it's right, right? So here's why this is so interesting, is that when we've got something like anxiety, we're telling a story about it, now we've got two things going on. Now we've got the thought that created the feeling of anxiety, right? That's one level. And then we've piled on another level where we're having a thought about the feeling that we're already feeling. This is wrong. So now we're piling on another level because now we're creating a new model. Now we're creating new thoughts and new feelings about the initial thoughts and the initial feelings, right? We're adding a secondary problem to the problem that we're already having. If we could be willing to look at what's happening and say, why is this anxiety showing up for me in the first place? What's going on here? What's happening? Right? And not tell a story about how right it is or how wrong it is or how there's something wrong with us and all of this excitement. If we could stay within the anxiety, then we would be doing the work that we want and need to be doing. We would be understanding our true emotions. We would be coming closer to understanding ourselves because we would be knowing what's going on. We wouldn't be covering it up with a secondary problem. So that is the first way that right and wrong thinking shows up in coaching. I see this a lot. This is wrong and I want something right, so help me get from wrong to right. And I just invite you to really think about and look at and challenge that story that something is right and something is wrong and that where you're at is currently wrong. Okay, so that's number one. Another angle that we can take with right and wrong is confirmation bias. This is such a fun thing to consider. So if you think about confirmation bias is where we take in information and knowledge and we use it to confirm what we already believe to be right and true. So perfect example of this, of course, is politics, right? Many of us have political beliefs. Some people have very strong political beliefs. And many of us seek out other people who have the same political beliefs, right? And they tell us stories, they tell us information about what's going on, they tell us things in a way that further gives us, it's like, here's some more proof, here's some more evidence that what I already believe to be true and right is true and right. Right? This is confirmation bias. We're taking in all of this new information and we're using it to prove that we are true and right. So this is interesting. And like in a lot of cases, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? When you are a parent and you surround yourself with other parents and you're kind of looking around and it's like, oh, look at all the parents in the world. Like this isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? But it can be bad, quote unquote bad, when you're looking to grow, when you're looking to create change, when you're looking to move past where you currently are, because it's very hard to go out there and seek information about maybe where you're wrong, maybe where you're not quite 100% right. Right? This is very challenging for us to do, to go out and find information that proves what we're currently doing isn't right, or how we're currently thinking, or our current beliefs aren't right, and that if we would change them, or if we would do something differently, or if we felt differently, that we would get a different result. And yet this is always what needs to happen when we want to create change, when we want to grow, when we want to create progress in our lives. We have to be willing to look at where we aren't 100% right in order to change something and move beyond where we are, right? But this is some of that fun pre-programming that our minds come with, where we are wired to scan for where we're right. We want to belong. We want to be a part of the group. We want to be a part of the community. So it's very scary for us to not belong. It's very scary for us to not be right. And so we're looking, this confirmation bias comes very naturally because we're wanting to be sure that we're included. We're wanting to know that what we already think and believe to be true is true and right. And we're just looking for more of that. So confirmation bias is another thing that shows up in coaching. This shows up for all of us in all of our lives, right? So we're labeling thoughts, feelings, actions, and results as right and wrong. We're using confirmation bias, maybe to our detriment. And the third way that, I have to get a little drink here. The third way that this can show up is with one up, one down thinking. Now, this one up, one down dynamic is pretty evident in a lot of relationships and in a lot of, whether this is one-on-one or whether it's groups of people. We typically have this one up, one down, yin yang sort of dynamic going on. For instance, and there's a lot of cultural conditioning that goes into this. So for instance, think about like a teacher in a classroom, right? The teacher by default is one up. We've made them the superior authority. They're the ones who are in charge. They're the ones who are right. We've labeled it that way. And as a student, or when we're talking to our children who are the students, we look at them and say, okay, you're one down, right? You don't know as much. You're not as right, right? So we're looking at this dynamic and we kind of present this to ourselves and to our children. Here's a one up, one down. We do this in our companies, right? Bosses and managers are, their role is kind of assumed that they're one up. They're the ones in charge. They're the ones with the authority. They're the ones with the power, right? And the employees are supposed to be one down. They're supposed to not quite know as much. They're supposed to ask for direction. They're supposed to maybe not be quite as right. They have to ask for permission, right? And this plays out in relationships. If you think about marriages, I can, in my own and in many marriages that I see around me, I can see how this plays out, where one partner is right about the finances. One partner is right about how to take care of the kids. One partner is right about how to do the grocery shopping and the cooking, right? And the other partner kind of like puts themselves in a one down position and defaults to like, well, I don't know, the other partner is the one who is in charge of the cooking or in charge of the finances or in charge of the kids, right? So there's a one up, one down dynamic in a lot of relationships. This can happen with friendships. This can happen with romantic relationships. This can happen with neighbors. This can happen with all sorts of things. It's like a power struggle, but it does show up with right and wrong mindset stuff, right? This applies here too, because a lot of people will show up to coaching, and when we dig in, we find that they have been putting themselves one down in a certain situation or in a certain relationship. They have taken their power away from themselves. I see people will show up to coaching and they'll say, oh, work is just so stressful, right? It's so hard. And we look at like all the places where they've given away their responsibility and their authority and their control and any say they would have over their time, over their tasks, over how they're doing the work that they're doing. It's like you've put yourself one down. What would it look like? Not necessarily to like do a power grab and put yourself one up, but how could you reach more towards neutrality, right? Because across the board, I think the most fascinating, let's take the teacher example again. The most fascinating teachers are the ones who are also willing to learn from their students, who show up and they have this concept that there's like a collective of learning that's happening, and we're all going to learn together. And then instead of assuming that the kid who's being rowdy or the kid who keeps raising his hand is being obnoxious, instead asking a question and see like, hey, what's going on, right? We're all going to learn something here today. So those are the most fascinating teachers. The most brilliant and compassionate and most energizing and invigorating bosses to work for are the ones who are like, okay, my role is to lead this team or to guide this or to steer this ship, but I really want input from you. You guys are the ones who are doing the work. You guys are the ones who are closest to this project. I want to hear from you. And there's a back and forth, right? There isn't a one up, one down dynamic. There's a neutral dynamic where people are just coming together in their different roles. That's fine. But there isn't this power, right, wrong struggle that's going on. Again, same with relationships. Think about some of the coolest couples that you know, right? And some of them have this very neutral dynamic to them, that it's like nobody's right or wrong in this relationship. We're all just in it together, right? We're all just getting the stuff done that needs to get done. We're all just doing our best. We're all here to love and to have fun. That's why we started this whole family and household and everything in the first place, right? So those are some of the most fascinating and inspiring couples, are the ones who really operate from this place of neutrality and not from a one up, one down. This one's got to tiptoe around this one, or this one's got to defer to this one, or whatever that looks like. So use these examples. Like I said, this is labeling thoughts, feelings, actions, and results as right or wrong. This is looking for confirmation bias and seeing if you can invite in other opinions or different opinions, or if you can challenge some current thinking or feeling or acting that you're looking at in yourself and saying, okay, if I weren't stuck in an echo chamber and looking for so much confirmation bias that I'm right and I'm right and I'm right, if I were willing to be wrong, if I were willing to learn, what would that look like here? Right? So that's number 2. And then number 3, one up and one down. Where are you presenting yourself as one up? Or where are you presenting yourself as one down? And how could you start showing up? It's not like you have to sit down with the people that you're involved in this relationship with, not even necessarily, and say, hey, I've noticed this and I want to bring this back to the midpoint. What you can do is start doing that by acting that way. You can show the people you're in relationship with that, like, hey, I've been putting myself one down, or I've been putting myself one up, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm curious to hear from you. I'm curious to learn from you. I'm going to come to the midpoint. I'm going to start acting that way. And maybe, most likely, right, when you start acting that way, the people who you are in relationship with will see that, they will feel that, they will notice that, and they may come along for the ride. Far more likely to come along for the ride if you're doing it first, right? So just a few different ways to think about right and wrong and these extremes in our mindset, these extremes that we come into our lives and our work and our relationships and our finances and our health. Extremes don't usually serve us very well. So see if any of these kind of, pinpoint a place where you getting kind of extreme in your mindset. And if it helps you kind of loosen that up a little bit, soften that so you can start coming closer to a midpoint. So if you are interested in talking about this with me, if you'd like to work on this with a coach, come schedule a consult call with me. Let's look at where you are putting right and wrong thinking, where you're introducing an extreme mindset, right, in any avenue of your life. And let's see, how is this creating anxiety and stress for you? Are you gripping on to power somewhere, or have you made yourself a victim somewhere? Are you labeling your experiences as wrong time and time again? Is that how you continuously talk to yourself? So those are just interesting things to consider. And like I said, if you're interested in talking about it and digging into that a little bit and seeing how you can start supporting yourself a little bit better around stress and anxiety, come on over. Let's do a consult call together. Let's take 20 minutes. We'll walk through an example from your real life. We'll start finding some solutions to that and just see what's going on. Sound good? So the link is in the notes here. You can come grab a spot over on my calendar that works for you. I would love to chat with you. Next week, we are going to be talking about the relaxation response. I already have the book out here. Do you see all this is how I read? I start pinpointing things I want to pull out. So anyway, this is a fantastic book, The Relaxation Response by Herbert Benson. We're going to be talking about the opposite of the stress response next week, which is the relaxation response. This is a term that he coined and talks about a lot in this book. So we're going to be digging into some of the best practices from that. And I'll be offering some tools. There'll be a worksheet that goes along with that. So I will see you same time, same place next week, where we will talk about the relaxation response. Until then, you guys have an amazing week. Take care. Bye for now.